Hey, Southeast Texas, this is Lowell Rogers with 11th Street Motors. Hey, I know everybody out there may or may not have had some problems as far as Hurricane Harvey is concerned, but 11th Street Motors wants to kind of educate you a little bit, because most of you may have lost a car and you're possibly going to be going out to purchase another car, and I want you to be aware of the things to look for on a car that may have been flooded. So here's some tips for you to take a look at to see if this may work for you. First thing you want to do is you want to look at the car and you want to check the oil. What you're looking for when you pop this oil stick, when you look at oil, you're looking to see if it's milky. If it looks milky, there's water that has gotten inside the motor of this car. That's a concern. You shouldn't even look at that car and you should move on to the next one. You want to pull a number of other things that you might want to do is you want to take this. A lot of times the covers, you want to look on the inside of the covers. If you see a pasty white inside the top of the cover of the oil filter cap or the oil cap, again, the engine's had water in it. They may have changed the oil, but they forgot to clean this. Something you want to look for. The other thing that they normally will forget to do is you're looking for, if you've noticed some flooding, and all of you have seen pictures on Facebook, one of the things you've noticed is all the water lines that you're noticing inside these houses. The same thing happens on a car. The longer that car sits in the water, the longer that water line is going to show on that car. Sometimes they don't do a real good job cleaning it. So if you're real observant and you look at the car from a distance, you're looking for a water line. And that water line may be here, it may be here, but typically you're going to find it somewhere in this area, and it's going to go down the side of the car, and you'll be able to see it and look at every panel on the car all the way around to determine whether or not there's been a water line. That's a little bit of what you want to look for on the outside of the car. Now let's look on the inside of the car. Now here's a few things you want to look for on the inside. Obviously, when you get inside a car and you're going to sit down, what's the first thing that you probably pay attention to when you get inside the car? Typically it's the smell. One of the things you want to be keen on is you want to be smelling the inside of these cars. If that car smells mildewy, check it. The one thing you can do to make sure is you want to feel the carpets in the front, you want to feel the carpets behind the seats, you want to feel, you can put your hand up underneath the dash where the jute, and if you don't know what jute is, that's the soft covering that's underneath the carpet itself. That absorbs the water. That's where the smell is coming from. That's what you want to be looking for. Another thing to really look for is look at the metal on the inside of the car. Look at the railing underneath the seats. Look at the bolts that hold down those seats. Those bolts will be rusted. That railing will be rusted or starting to rust. That gives you an indication that the inside of that car, that water has been inside of it, okay? And they may or may not have done a real good job with taking care of it and remediating that car. And none of us want to buy a car that's ever been flooded. Because the reason why, most likely, when you sit down in this car, you may turn on the ignition, the air conditioner may blow fine, everything may be perfectly fine with it for a while, but eventually what ends up happening is you start having electrical problems, which lead up to another electrical problem, which lead up to multiple electrical problems, and these are things that are difficult to find and they're hard to repair. That's why most insurance companies are going to total cars if they find out that the car has had water on the inside of it. One other thing I'll show you in the rear of the car. Let's go back to the rear of the car. Okay, now we're standing at the rear of the car. This is something that a lot of times they forget about. And this is something you really want to pay attention to. Car's been underwater. What do you typically think happens? Water gets inside of a vehicle and it goes and it puddles where? At the lowest possible point. Well, the lowest possible point in the trunk is where? It's underneath this particular, where your spare tire is. So the first thing you want to do is you want to lift this up and you want to look down in that tire wheel well and you want to see if water is sitting in it. If there's water in it, you can bet that this car's had water in it. And a lot of times they forget about that. They don't even think about that. They're more concerned with what the inside of that car is going to look like instead of the other places to look for. These are just some tips from 11th Street Motors to help you out. And if you ever have any questions as to whether or not these cars have, even if it's not here, bring it by. If you're looking at a car down the road, bring it by. We'll look at it for you, and we'll all look at it and determine whether or not that car may or may not have had water in it. And that's your tip from 11th Street Motors.